Open Your Eyes is brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.
Good morning. Welcome to Open Your Eyes.
Start your morning right.
I'm Marlene Cuellar.
And I'm Gavin Courtney.
And thank you for joining us this morning. Oh, and right into our weather update. Let's find out what we can expect for today.
Yep. So we've got Shayna Young on the line. Good morning, Shayna.
Good morning.
All right, and how are you doing today?
I'm okay.
Great. Let's see if we can get some good news. So what kind of general situation are we looking at for the weather?
Okay, well, relatively moist and unstable conditions will continue over the area for the next few days.
Okay, and over the next 24 hours?
So skies will be cloudy at times with isolated showers or thunderstorms inland this afternoon, then a few more over the south tonight.
Okay, and what about the winds?
So the winds will be from the east at 10 to 20 knots, and sea conditions will be choppy to moderate.
Okay, in terms of our temperatures, what are we looking at for high temperatures?
High temperatures today along the coast will be 87 degrees Fahrenheit, 95 inland, and 83 in the hills. So currently we still have an advisory for those residents inland to remain hydrated and avoid outdoor activities as much as possible.
Okay, and the low temperatures?
The low temperatures for tonight will be 80 degrees Fahrenheit along the coast, 72 inland, and 70 in the hills.
Okay, and over the next few days, what is the outlook looking like?
Well, for Friday morning, a few showers or isolated thunderstorms is expected to continue mainly over the south and increasing Friday night. And the weekend is looking a bit wet.
Oh, so yeah, we're expecting a bit of rain this weekend.
Yeah.
Over the entire country?
Yes, mostly starting over the south at first, but then eventually moving over most areas.
Okay, so and apart from the advisory to stay indoors and avoid the heat, is there anything else that we're looking at, or any systems that we should be concerned about over the next couple of days?
At this moment, we don't have any additional advisories except for the heat one, but maybe during the course of today or probably tomorrow, after further analysis, additional advisories may be possible for flooding.
Okay.
If possible, but it should be you should get an update later today or tomorrow.
Okay, so great, we'll be monitoring that situation. But in the meantime, thanks a lot for that update, Shayna.
You're welcome.
All right, and we hope you have a good day.
You too.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Okay, so if you are complaining about the sun, then just know that the rain is coming.
Oh yeah, so get your umbrellas ready, make sure you got your rubber boots.
Yeah, no, I know they spoke of the tropical wave that may be approaching, and so it means that we will be getting quite a bit of rain, and it'll start off in the south, of course. All right, we're going to keep things moving now with our eye opener, and our eye opener taken from dailyom.com goes like this. Running your life and your household is a bit like running a business, for which some things can easily be delegated. Sometimes we have so many varying responsibilities in our lives, ranging from work obligations to caring for children to running a household. We feel we cannot possibly make it all work. We may feel overwhelmed in the face of it all, ending each day feeling hopelessly behind schedule. However, regardless of how frustrating this can be, these are the parameters that make up our lives, and we owe it to ourselves to find a way to make it work. Rather than buckling under the pressure of an impossible to-do list, we might take a moment to view the larger perspective. For example, expecting ourselves to create a healthy home-cooked meal every night after a full day of work, errands, or caring for an infant or toddler may be a bit excessive. We might allow ourselves to order in food once in a while without any guilt. Accepting the adjustments needed to make our lives work is an essential ingredient to being at peace with our situation. Accepting this momentary state of affairs and trusting in our ability to get back on track when the time is right, we gracefully accept our life as it is, letting go of perfectionism and embracing life as it stands.
Marlene, as you were reading that, my mind, and I don't know, maybe I'm jumping the gun, maybe yours too, but I'm not sure, my mind automatically made, turn to the adjustments that all of us have been having to make in the wake of, the COVID-19 pandemic. Yeah. A lot of us, whether, unfortunately, if a lot of us have lost jobs or otherwise, they have to be making new adjustments to their work. A lot of businesses are being affected. They have to change new hours. They have to be operating with different staff. So the to-do lists and all the adjustments that need to make might seem endless right now. So a lot of people are struggling to cope, not just with the logistics, but also with the mental strain that it's all taking, because, this is an unprecedented time. Mm-hmm. So it's super important that people hear and receive messages like this, just, if anything, to sort of take them out of all of the chaos that might be happening, and to take a step back and say, look, this is going to be difficult, but it's possible if I do X, Y, and Z, if I delegate, as it says, if I employ strategies that take so much pressure off of getting things done perfectly. Yeah. It's a process, and we have to be accepting of the fact that it's going to be slow. Sometimes it might be difficult, but other times, it doesn't have to be difficult, and we don't have to be, struggling to make everything perfect or make it back like it was, So I really like this message because it's one that's going to resonate, I think, with a lot of people.
Yeah, and I think what you just outlined is exactly, what the eye-opener is encouraging us to do within our own households. Yeah. At work, there's a time when you shut off. There's a time when you say, okay, well, this is as much as I can get done. The rest will have to wait for tomorrow. And it's kind of the same thing you have to do at home. I think if you could only, I think very often of parents, and especially mothers and households right now that are juggling so many things. And naturally, I think that there's an expectation that you're just going to be able to keep up with it. And people can put pressure on you, but even more so, you put pressure on yourself.
Oh, yeah.
You feel guilty that maybe you gave the kids some fast food, or you didn't cook something as healthy as you wanted to cook, or whatever. Dinner was late, or you didn't do the dishes. And so we're ragging on ourselves about being able to do things that are superhuman. There's only so much time allotted to you during the day. You need to get quality sleep. And most importantly, you do need some downtime where you're just kind of releasing yourself of the stressors of the day. And I think the eye-opener just closes off perfectly. It's about perfectionism. It's about keeping up a standard that you think is right. And if you're not able to meet that at this time or ever, then make the shifts that are necessary. That's as simple as it is. If you can't cook, you could make something out of leftovers. If you probably can't get all the housework done, then don't do it tomorrow.
No, absolutely. I think that's a great thing that you said, because a lot of the times, if we don't accomplish, what maybe our to-do list for the day or whatever, as you say, we rag on ourselves or we feel bad. We put pressure. We think, oh, this is so bad. And especially people who are providing for, children or their family or whatever, people, whether it's mom, I'm being super, generic and stereotypical man as this, whether it's, the person who doesn't get all the household things done, or whether it's the breadwinner or breadwinners who aren't able to meet some of their responsibilities at times. There can be immense pressure that people put on themselves when they don't have to, especially when a lot of the situations are temporary, It's not the end of the world if, perhaps you didn't get to do one item on the list. Yeah. Maybe it can be done tomorrow. Maybe it can be done in a different way. Or, and then also, you can also take a step back and look at, well, why didn't I do this? Is there an easier way I can do it? Can somebody else help out? Can I ask for help? Of course,
Can the kids help?
Yeah, can the kids help out, Is it something that I can do or what can I do in the future to make this less stressful on me? And of course, speaking of stress, I really love that you said that we do have to take times out to have some downtime. It's absolutely necessary. We don't get all of the rest we need just from sleeping. Even if you do get, a good 8 hours of sleep in the night, when you're awake, you need time to de-stress, to defunction, time to do things you enjoy. And don't feel guilty about that, because a lot of us do feel guilty when we take that time off, when it's, have you ever had that moment when, like, maybe you're on vacation or something, you're like, oh, I wish, I should be working, or I should be doing something, or I forgot this.
This is the perfect time to get this done.
Yeah, or, I forgot this at home, or I wonder if this is going to be okay. And I'm like, no, you need to actually at least, you need to take time, decompress.
Yeah, and also, I think it's like you do with your to-do list. If you're somebody who perhaps makes lists, you prioritize them. And so there are things that absolutely have to get done. Yeah, the kids have to eat, the family has to eat.
Yeah.
You understand that. It's what processes you choose, but even more so, if you think of when you prioritize a list, because you prioritize it because it's just more important. And one of the things that we really don't prioritize is quality time with other people, quality time with your family, quality time with your kids. Yes, you can come home, clean, cook, and sit and feed them, and then they go to bed, but how much interaction have they had? Is your child going to be happier with a sink that doesn't have dirty dishes, or happier having spent an hour sitting with you and talking or watching something together or playing together? I mean, it's an easy answer, but for some reason we kind of pressure ourselves into the next direction.
Yeah, and I think that it also can apply to the workplace and our workplace relationships, in the sense that, especially if you're in a management position, it doesn't really take anything to check on your employees or check on the team and say, how are you doing?
Especially right now.
Especially right now. To say, how are you doing? Is the pace of work, is it working for you? Are you feeling overwhelmed at your, at your job, or all sorts of things. Even the interactions that we have with our coworkers, if we have breaks, we have a lot of offices or whatever do some sort of team building exercises, just so that the workplace environment can be conducive to, not only good work, but also, camaraderie and a good relationship among the thing. Because, we spend a lot of time at work. We see these people every day. We see our coworkers every day. So it's important that that environment remains, reduces stress as well. Because if we are working in a stressful environment day after day, that is going to carry into your personal life as well.
Of course.
So it's good to establish these boundaries and, work through it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we hope that the eye-opener puts you at ease a bit to release yourself of all the responsibilities that seem to be mounting, and most importantly, that you do your own priority list and stick to that, and just let go of feeling that you have to do everything every single day. All right, but we got to get moving into our show for today. And this morning, of course, our conversation about COVID-19 has definitely taken a shift, and that shift is looking at the economy. And we know when we hear stories and we see stories of people who are really having a tough time, and the country itself is kind of trying to find its footing of how to move forward. And so we're actually going to be having a conversation about an economic recovery plan for Belize, and that is going to be a conversation with the former mayor of Belize City and the current president of the Senate, Darrell Bradley.
And we're going to be continuing our conversation about the economy, about jobs in particular. For our second conversation, we are actually going to be joined by Radical Belize. They're going to be talking to us about their 15th anniversary, which is coming up. And also, really importantly, they are also going to be talking to us about the recruitment that exercise that they're doing. And they're going to be adding 500 jobs. And so they're going to be talking to us all about that recruitment initiative.
All right, and then we're going to close off. Of course, We had the conversation with Linda when she was still stuck in the sea, and now she's back on land, quarantining in Belize City. And we're going to check in with her and another cruise crew member who is being quarantined at this time about how they're doing and just how this whole process has unfolded for them. So that's going to be our final conversation before we shift gears into
Kids time. Of course, we've got something for the kids, so you want to get them around the TV when that's coming up, because Dr. Binox is going to be teaching us today all about tsunamis.
That's right. So that's what we have in store for today. We're going to go ahead and take that break. When we come back, we'll be starting our first conversation. So please stay tuned.
Today's COVID update is brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price but stay for the service.
And we are back, jumping into our first conversation today. We are talking about the economy today. And we, for our COVID-19 update today, we are going to be joined by Darrell Bradley, the attorney at law, former mayor of Belize City, and the current president of the Senate. Good morning, Darrell.
Good morning, Gavin. It's a pleasure to be here, especially under these circumstances.
Yes, of course, it's a pleasure to have you with us as always. We are talking today about an economic plan for the recovery of the Belizean economy, right? So the first question I guess we can jump right into is how it is that you came about making this sort of a plan.
Well, I think essentially every Belizean is very concerned in relation to the current situation. I think it came about as a result of my conversations with various stakeholders within Belize, including people in the business community. I myself am a business owner, having been the proprietor of a law firm. And as an individual invested in the economy, I'm concerned with how quickly we can rebound as a society so that we can continue to get business on the road, provide jobs and opportunities for individuals. So that it came as a result of my personal experience during the closure, but also my interaction with the person.
Yeah. So you decided to record this particular, what it is just a number of ideas and a look forward as the things we may need to do as a country to kind of get the economy jump-started again. And of course, it has been running as an ad. Have you gotten any reactions to it as yet?
Well, surprisingly, a lot of people have texted me and raised additional ideas. For example, one of the things that I think I didn't address in the communication was really the idea of individual planning. Like, for example, household planning, getting back to the idea of thrift and saving and planning for circumstances which are beyond our control. One of the things that we realized during these circumstances is how few Belizeans, because of their salary, because of certain circumstances, they don't have emergency funds. So one of the things that people have really expressed to me is just the comment that you want to also focus on individual responsibility, that people in your own homes. I know that earlier you were talking about hurricane and you were talking about a tropical storm. One of the things that we're always mindful of is that as individuals, we also need to be prepared.
Yes. Yeah.
And you know,
feedback and positive response in relation to what people want to see happen. One of the things I want to underscore here is that nothing in this plan is really new. It's not novel. And I think when we talk about jumping the economy back, it's really about macro things like inclusion and getting to the people who can bring good ideas to the forefront. The idea of investment in particular areas of the economy. None of the things are new. The idea of a living wage, the idea of a land program, the idea of free education, the idea of skills training. But it's really to ensure that as a society, working with their stakeholders, we can come together.
You know, those are great points. But what I want to sort of start the conversation by saying is that I think early on in the video that you released, you said something to the effect that COVID is not necessarily and I'm paraphrasing you, is that not necessarily the cause of a lot of the problems in our society, but rather it's exposing the harsh realities. So I would like to get kind of your assessment of what you mean by the harsh realities, and what is your assessment of the situation, Belize's economic situation as it stands currently?
Yeah, well, one of the things that you would be aware of is, as a small economy, and I've read articles of this, Belize's economic structure, there's a limitation on us responding to shock. When I was at City Council, we feared a lot of threats as a result of hurricanes. Any shock to our economy really can cause widespread collapse. And so we need to plan the economy around that so that it's appropriately diversified and we don't depend on one area. I mean, I suspect that Belize will always be heavily dependent on tourism, but there are things that we can do to diversify our economy to ensure that we have other pillars of the economy that traditionally has been mainstream, including things in terms of the economy, agro-processing. We've always, I've worked with various projects and consulted and advised in relation to energy and energy independence and in terms of novel areas like wind energy and solar panel. So one of the things that I kind of try to focus on is what we need to do in terms of ensuring that our economy can respond to shock events. I mean, the pandemic hit everybody in the world by surprise. Nobody really was expecting it, but our economy is always going over the shocks like a hurricane.
Mm-hmm. You know, I think one of the things when we look at the impact of COVID, and I really appreciate that you said it really just exposed the realities. It exposed things like the inequity that exists in our society. It exposed, I know a lot of people have questioned the unemployment figures, and we've been able to kind of talk about that with SIB, that our problem isn't so much unemployment, it's underemployment, because if you work 1 hour for the week, you're considered employed, but definitely not making enough to live. So I think when we look at all these issues, they were there before. We've been talking about diversifying the economy. We've been talking about reducing the wage bill. We've been talking about making ease of making businesses have more ease of transactions and kind of lightening the load that they were taking. I mean, when we talk about free education, that's been, I think, before my lifetime, that's been a conversation. Yeah. So these ideas have all existed before, but now that we're in this crunch and there is a need to, 1, get the economy started, 2, get it to rebound, and 3, get it to grow, which we haven't been able to do for quite a while. How do you assess priorities and what is actually feasible?
Well, I think I would broaden it in 3 categories. First of all, there has to be a focus on addressing this area of inequality that you identified. And I think that this is something that has been pervasive in Belize. So I talk about things like ensuring the access to land. And I think traditionally in Belize, from both political parties, we've never organized a proper land policy to ensure that every Belizean has access to land. And then also in relation to providing a range of options for affordable housing. One of the indicators of entry into the middle class is that a person owns their own house. I've been, in my law firm, inundated by questions from landlords and tenants in relation to how to deal with the situation. Now, people aren't paying their rent. But if people own their own home at this current point, they would have been less vulnerable to evictions and so forth. Then they talk about having a living wage. That's actually a fundamental thing, an idea that has been about globally to ensure that people have a basic calculated wage that allows them to withstand inflation and other threats in the economy. So that there are things that we need to do in relation to ensure people move out of the lower bracket and they go up. There are other things that we need to do in relation to ensuring that there are strategic investments in the economy. I've heard over the last month about major projects that are in the pipeline, and I think that government needs to work quicker to ensure that these projects are really being implemented quickly. The turnaround time for it is too long. I remember when I was at City Hall at the downtown rehabilitation project, I became mayor and I went through the entire 6 years, and monies didn't start to roll until I left City Hall. So it takes too long to unwind the channels of bureaucracy so that these project monies can be invested into the economy. One of the things that I think that needs to be done is a stimulus fund. We actually need to identify resources that we can pump into the economy very quickly. And the third thing, very importantly, is that government needs to focus on performance. Gavin can tell you this, there's at any given time a lot of people who want to invest in Belize, but just to get a land title document back from the lands department, to get certain government services, it takes too long, and that's unacceptable. We need to focus on things like making the government efficient, addressing issues of corruption and really making sure that the government is all about performance. But I think if we can focus on those three areas quickly, including legislation and policy reform, and making the government better coordinated, including out of the office of the Prime Minister, one of the things I propose is that there needs to be a project unit in the office of the Prime Minister so that these strategic projects need to be coordinated from the highest level so that monies can be flow very quickly.
And quickly, that's essentially what we're talking about here, because as we have this conversation, we are looking at thousands, tens of thousands that are unemployed, that are not making any income, that are waiting on, $100, $150 to be given out by government, which will come to an end at some point in time. And we're facing, these families are already in a crisis. I can't imagine not being able to figure out how I'm going to pay my rent or my utility bills, or worse, put food on the table. So it's about urgent actions first. We've been trying to have more conversations about, what could be done, what should be done, what might work. And what we haven't heard as yet is actually a formal plan being put forward by the government in terms of what we're going to do to get us back or get the economy moving again. We only get tidbits here or there. Now, it's important that we strategize, and I want to ask, because you are the president of the Senate, you're a member of the ruling administration. Is there talk of getting a group of persons together to decide on a plan that will get us through this crisis?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people are coming together both in the government and in the NGO community and among relevant stakeholders. But this is one of the issues that I kind of find is difficult with our political structure. And these are things which we needed to address in the past, but it really becomes a focal point in this pandemic. We really need to ensure that we are able to bring together the brightest minds. And I think we have it in Belize. We have people who are making it work during this pandemic. I have had the opportunity of touring various industry sectors throughout the country, and I was fascinated the level of technology that is actually in our agricultural belt. We're doing amazing things in Belize. It's how do we expand that? So one of the things that I think that can be done immediately is that government needs to identify funding so that we have a stimulus package within Belize immediately. And I'm talking about a significant amount of money. We also need to identify large projects that can bring money into the economy very quickly, and we need to unfold those things through proper coordination so that if it is legislation, if it is policy reform, one of the things also that I think can be done is that you can give certain levels of tax reprieve in relation to businesses that keep their employees. So that I know that England had did this, and we're talking about a situation where government needs money. But I'm saying that you can have a balance. One of the things that I did speak about when I was on Open Your Eyes previously is the elimination of trade license fees. I think that that is something that affects businesses very negatively. And now is a time when you can show a gesture to the business community to encourage investment. Say that, okay, we're going to go and we're going to eliminate that, because that's not something that I think directly correlates to any service that members of the public, and that's an area that would give some reprieve to members of the business community. What I'm saying is that the things that can be done relatively quickly to provide funding so that spending can go in the economy while we figure out the remaining parts of it.
And as a sort of general, or let's say an umbrella policy then, in order to enact all of these sort of initiatives, do you envision that we are going to continue sort of operating, and I'm speaking now specifically about an policy in terms of economics, that we're going to continue along sort of a similar system, or let's say a free market sort of more capitalist system, or do you envision it going in a more socialized direction? Because these are conversations that are being had all over the world, and governments are trying to look at innovative situations to create, sort of a societal safety net. So when you're talking about these policies, is it so? For example, would we be looking at a stimulus package to where government is perhaps, creating policies, perhaps even lending money to the private sector in order to stimulate?
Yeah.
Or are we looking at, the government actually having a stake in these things, subsidizing programs, so that, in order to pay for, some of these programs that you've suggested, such as free education, X, Y, and Z. So sort of what direction or vision do you have for the economic future of the country?
Well, one of the main things I think is the concept of partnership. I think that there has to be a balance so that Belize has always operated on the middle ground. We've never been over the socialists, we've never been over the capitalists. And I think that should be the way that we continue. But there has to be government direct investment in the economy. So, for example, we've oftentimes talked about this and it's been put out there, but it's actually been the state of mismanagement and abuse. But something like having capital accessible to people who are investing, particularly in newer small businesses like agricultural businesses. So one of the things that I would say is that things like the Development Finance Corporation needs to be expanded, but it needs to be expanded in a very transparent way so that we can provide capital to people who would invest in the economy and create jobs. We've heard like a lot of the sectors in tourism have been hit. A lot of other businesses have been hit. Government needs to actually specifically talk about ways that we can assist businesses and encourage them to retain as long as possible their employees until such time that the COVID relief is opened up so that the businesses can resume to normalcy. So that the idea of stimulus is something that other countries have done, even countries of comparable size to Belize. So it can't be an answer that we say that we just don't have money. We need to find the money. And even if we would take the money out of the economy, because Belize's economy right now is very liquid. We have a lot of liquidity. We have monies that are saved at bank. Right now, we need money. We can utilize those monies through financial instruments like bonds and so forth, and redirect those monies into investment projects that create jobs. And that's actually something that can be done very quickly. When I was at City Hall, we did the municipal bond. We took an organization that was really in the red for 30 years. And we did a municipal bond that we invested in infrastructure. And as a result of that, there was a resurgence of business activity and hope within the Belize city culture. And that's something that can be done again at the national level. Yeah. You can have financial instruments that draw money out of the economy and reinvest it back in the economy. So businesses and money would circulate relatively quickly.
You know, I hear what you're saying, and I think the stimulus idea is one that we've heard both from the tourism sector and also we've heard it from the private sector through the chamber as well. And there have been some innovative ideas and concerns that we've heard, I think, over the past few weeks. The business sector is even talking about being able to restrict some of the imports that we have of goods that are produced locally. The tourism sector is talking about being able to access capital through IFIs, through international financial institutions, to be able to offer that to the tourism sector so that they would be able to have low interest, long-term loans. So, yeah. And then I hear your ideas as well, but I still go back to the same question. These ideas are kind of being thrown around in different sectors naturally because everybody's just trying to keep their head above the water, but we don't hear anything as to what is going to be implemented. We don't hear anything about what is going to be the vision, because the challenge is, and you'll know, coming from public administration, is that once you start get moving into all these ad hoc plans, you end up just doing, but with no vision and no end goal in mind.
Yeah. So I think that's an important point. I think fundamentally, and one of the things that I addressed with the plan is that government needs to be better coordinated. And we have a society that's very small, so government will always have a dominant role in the conversation. The office of the Prime Minister and Cabinet are very strategically placed in relation to coordinating sectors of the economy. That will never change. But what we need to do is that we need to create a culture where we can bring together ideas. One of the things that I've oftentimes observed in our discussion is how much fighting we have, among political parties, how much fighting we have between government and the unions, between government and the private sector. This is a time that we need unity, and we need the coming together of ideas and bright minds, irrespective of political parties, irrespective of government and private sector, and we need to bring together partnership to implement this relatively quickly. The ideas are there. It just requires the political will and the leadership at the very top to make it work. I mean, many of the things that you have just outlined are things which are very excellent ideas and things which can be done in a relatively short period of time. There are a bulk of IFIs out there which are targeting smaller countries, developing and emerging markets like Belize, and they're prepared to offer funding. But the government then needs to channel that resource and then on lend in the local economy so that people have access, as you said, to these short-term low-interest loans so that they can bounce back as quickly as possible. The idea of partnership and relationships is a fundamental concept, both in getting us out of COVID and in the long-term development economic strategy for Belize. Working with the diaspora community that I mentioned. And one of the things that I think is important to recognize is how much the diaspora contribute to the growth of Belize's economy. I have so many people who live in the United States who are Belizean Americans, Belizean Canadians, Belizeans living abroad, who have expressed interest in investing back in Belize. And that's something that we can channel very, very quickly, working with our international partners, diplomatic missions, working with the private sector. You've heard me talk about eliminating trade license. I think that now is the time for us really to focus on that and seeing how we can alleviate some of the burdens on the business community so that they can then provide the investment in job creation that's needed at this time.
It also requires a high level of innovation. And I've been saying this for quite a while. I think that if we just look globally, everybody's facing the same situation, trying to figure out how to get their economy restarted, how to get people working again, how to get businesses functioning well enough to be able to have employees. And it's going to take brand new ideas, and it's going to take a bit of risk-taking in terms of how you will move forward. And, I'll give you this idea, especially because you're one of our younger politicians. I think sometimes, too, we need to look at bringing in some of our recent graduates or people who are younger to kind of talk about the direction that the country needs to go as well, because what we have done in the past most likely will not be our way forward.
Yeah. I think that it's not the ideas. For example, one of the major pillars of the Belizean economy, which I think could be a mainstay. You look at certain countries like Taiwan and South Korea, they're known for certain things. I think Belize can be known for energy production. And when you look at one thing that Belize had, yesterday I was walking through Belize City, and one of the things that I realized is that it's so very hot. We have the sun. And we should talk about conversations on getting energy production up and running significantly in Belize. It's something that we've language with litigation and so forth. And we buy power right now, cheaply produced power, but we still buy power from Mexico. We can produce energy in Belize and we can export energy to Central America. That's actually one that we can do within, I think that this is not as a result of COVID, but that's one of the areas that can be a mainstay of our economy. When we talk about agro-processing, secondary industries to agriculture, we can promote that to a large extent. And I do believe what the Chamber of Commerce was doing is that we import too much things. And I think that we need to shift our economy so that we start to be producers and we balance our trade deficit. So that those are things that we need to focus on relatively quickly while we get the economy started. And one of the things that I would just kind of comment on is that none of these are new ideas. What I think we need is not new ideas, but we need a new framework in leadership. A framework that talks about a vision, a framework that talks about collaboration, a framework that talks about partnership and inclusion, and really getting things done in terms of performance quickly. I think that government believes it's just too bureaucratic and it's too long to do things, and we're very standoffish. we are opposed to ideas. And one of the things that we need to do is that we need to create a funnel so that best ideas rise to the top and be implemented relatively quickly. It's not about the idea, it's about the process and how we make decisions as a country.
And also, Daryl, I also kind of want to address what I, think, and it's something that you mentioned earlier, but it's kind of like the elephant in the room, in that one of the biggest reasons, if not the biggest reason, why a lot of policies have failed, policies have not been implemented, and that we do, and the reason why we do have a lot of the problems in our economy and society is the issue of corruption. And that's something that you mentioned a little bit earlier in passing. But I'd like to know a little bit more about what your thoughts are on how we can tackle the corruption, which seems to be so pervasive in all areas of our society.
Yeah. So one of the things that I would readily put out there is that I think, and there are studies on this that look at the amount of GDP that is lost by corruption and wastage, and I think that that's very large. So that if we make government more efficient, and if we pass laws, for example, we've talked about things like an unjust investment legislation. I've recently talked about campaign finance reform. You've given opportunity to kind of outline draft legislation about that. So that I think one of the things that we need to focus on quite heavily in this country is leadership. And we need to focus on not only anti-corruption, because when we look at anti-corruption, it's very negative. What we need to focus on is government performance. And I think that when we talk about performance, it subsumes anti-corruption. When you look at the UNCTAD, the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, one of the biggest things that's mentioned there is a merit-based public service. It talks a lot about performance. So we do need to focus on ensuring that we don't steal money, but we need to really get back to a government that delivers service in the most cost-effective method. I go back to this. A lot of people would invest in Belize. As a lawyer, Gavin, you be familiar with this. A lot of foreign investors come to your law firm and they would want to buy land, they would want to invest in Belize, but it takes too long. And what we need to do at the country is that we need to give a lot of thought and energy into making timelines for the acquisition of government service. When I became a lawyer, a land transfer document used to take us 4 weeks to get. Now sometimes it takes you over a year. We're actually regressing government services. And that's something that we need to focus on quite acutely if we want to move the economy forward. A lot of people believe, but we need to create an enabling environment based on performance where our government functions effectively and efficiently in delivering the services that we want. One of the things also that I think that we need to focus on is that in other countries, they have laws about this where politicians can't give individuals things. And I think that that's very important, so that during an election cycle, you have whatever is going on in relation to grafting or whatever, but there has to be a separation. If people want to access goods and services, they have to access those things from official government channel, public service. A strengthened public service that's dependent on efficiency, that people can access things like housing and grants, business assistance and so forth, so that you do not feel that you are beholden to any politician on those things. I think that that is actually a critical area that I've kind of talked a lot about. But I think the most important issue in getting the economy back on track and getting Belize back on track is addressing this issue of performance and dealing with corruption.
Well, let me be pragmatic for a moment. We are in an election year, and I 100% support. I think any Belizean supports that we get a handle on the corruption that we know exists in this country. And it takes us right back to the start of our conversation in looking at the inequities that we see in our society. But we're in an election year, and we know how things work, and we see things happening right now. Politicians are out giving out food to people. There are allegations being made that some persons have easier access to some of the pantry programs versus others who are supported by other who are of the opposite party. So it's taking place even in a time where people are desperate for help. So talking about being able to shift corruption, let me give you a prime example. When the PSU asked for just a simple a list of employees, who's working, who are the public servants in the country, what are they making, what are their responsibilities. We can't get that list. We haven't gotten any accountability as to how funds are being dispersed, even during COVID-19. The Ministry of Health may read out a list of things every now and again, but when it comes to financial assistance, we still don't know. So if we look forward and imagine that that will be what will continue even as we try a recovery process, it leads to a lot of skepticism, I think, from the wider society.
I think a big problem is the issue of trust and credibility.
Yes.
So that when you are charting a vision, when you want to move something forward, people have to believe in something. And I think if you're going to ask people, because this is going to be a difficult time for our country, it will require austerity, it will require prudence, it will require thrift, and everyone will not come out unscathed. But I think that if you're going to ask people to make sacrifices, you have to demonstrate that you yourself are willing to make sacrifices and you yourself are willing to do the correct things. And I think that this is something that affects our entire political system. It is something that basically the idea of that there is a lack of trust and credibility in terms of government on the whole. This is not something that is particular to the leaders. Yeah. But I think that what we need is a different form of leadership in our country, a form of leadership that is and that can work across political lines and that can be transparent. For example, one of the things that people were kind of like commenting on, they used to always tell me that Mr. Mayor used to always be on news. And one of the reasons why that was the case is that a politician should never refuse an interview. A politician should never refuse to submit information. Why? Because we have to be transparent about what we do. I think that there has to be a balance in relation to moving the economy forward, but it has to be the center around how do we get this leadership question in our country? How do we ensure that government is working for people, that it is transparent and accountable, that there are laws in place that ensure that the governmental apparatus moves in a way that's open? And this is one of the things that I'm talking about. It should not be that an individual gets anything from a political office. You shouldn't go to a political office for anything. You should get that from the public servant who is empowered by the political system to distribute goods and services. It should be channeled and properly accounted for, so that to the extent that you have politicians giving out certain things, to the extent that you have politicians providing resources and things like that, that is something that we move away from rather urgently, because it will perpetuate a cycle where people feel that they're dependent on politicians and this idea of corruption being continued in our society.
Yeah,
so the point is that we need to really strengthen the public service and channel efficient resources through the public service.
And I do agree, but do you then expect that this would be kind of an uphill battle in the sense that the present system sort of favors, or shall I say, it works for a lot of the people who are facilitating this corruption, and whether or not whichever party does get in power, because of the weaknesses that are already present in the system, how do we create reform when persons in powerful positions are going to be benefiting from it, that they're probably going to be opposed? We look, a good example or a good parallel I could say is if we look to politics in the US, a lot of conversations have been had, especially in recent times, by about creating more social equality, shifting to more socialist policies, at least in terms of healthcare, education. But we see that in that country, powerful lobbies, people with lots of money, directly prevent policy changes on the governmental level because they have the influence of money. And a lot of people can argue that the same thing can happen or is happening here. So how do we really deal with that on a practical level?
Well, it's really a powerful point that you're making, but the only way that you can deal with that is by empowering the base of society. So that if you notice, a lot of what I focus on in This plan is really talking about education and education reform and ensuring that education is free. One of the countries that I have always been very impressed with is Barbados. And Barbados has had a long policy of free education, and the average Bajan citizen is very empowered, and they act as a check and balance on political power. And Barbados has a smaller population than Belize, and it is about the size of the Stanton district, but they have 8 times our GDP. So that they have been able to march to themselves, and they have a very high human development index. I think that is one of the number 1 developing countries in the world in our region and a sister country within CARICOM, so that we can learn a lot from them, particularly on this idea of empowering people through education. And one of the fundamental things that I think affects Belize is that people really do not understand the importance of political process and the importance of a vote. And they allow politicians and they allow political system to diminish the power of the vote. And one of the things that I've read, that I've seen a lot, and I want to really appreciate the media, including Open Your Eyes, for really giving me a space to talk about ideas, because I find these are political systems not about ideas. It's about people and personalities and politics. So when you talk about should we move towards socialism, or should we provide a safety net for believers, one of the things that I have looked at this one is whether or not we should have a permanent unemployment benefit. For example, you see that right now they're talking about this $75 per week for people who are unemployed. Whether or not there should be some permanent unemployment benefit that straddles beyond it. That's one of the things that I have not really formalized as an idea, but that's something that may be here to assist people. But we don't really talk about ideas like this. The campaign finance reform that came and that went as a conversation. But these are things that Belizeans, union, the Chamber of Commerce, people in civil society, average Belizeans, we need to have conversations about these things on an ongoing basis so that we can hold political leaders accountable. Now is the best time to do that because it's an election year. Because we will focus a lot on political ideas and political activity, now is the best time to have a conversation about what system we need to put in place very quickly in order to ensure that we have change and we have reform in our governmental structure. But it boils down to where the citizen is and that they're empowered through information and education. Yeah. And I think the biggest job of a leader is really communication, is really articulating ideas and a vision so that people believe in that and people can buy onto that. They know why you're doing that. And they can vote for you because they believe in something rather than they believe in $50 or $100.
You know, I think what we've also seen through this pandemic is where our focus has primarily been on investing in money makers. Let me give an example. And you know this in politics. I think we've had this conversation when you were in office, that it is a lot sexier for a politician to build roads than it is to be able to invest in people, because it's a tangible. You see streets, you left, and everybody sees concrete streets, and that's what they remembered. But that was your mandate as a city council. But versus the larger government, you know, investing in unemployment benefits, investing in living wage, or investing in kind of enhancing the safety nets that we have in place, investing in healthcare, which we had to play crazy catch up on in a matter of weeks. Those aren't necessarily the sexy or appealing things that will get you elected. And I go back to the same issue, that's kind of been the status quo in the country. What we do is to get us back in office or to get our friends back in office each term that comes around. And that's where the effort and the priorities go.
Well, I would put this out there, and I mentioned this before on your show. Politicians do what people vote for. And that's something that you have to understand. So that the system exists the way it exists because politicians get votes. So that if we demand different from our politicians, change will happen. I was at City Hall and I recognized the need to make tough choices. But we were able to chart a vision and we won 2 elections by landslides because you communicated with people a different vision, a change. So that what I think needs to happen is that it needs to be twofold. Individual people need to take responsibility for this as well. It's not always take the politician out and beat the politician. Individuals need to recognize the power and significance of their vote. And if we want change, you have to vote for change. You can't want things to happen and expect that people who have been doing things the same way for the last 50 years will miraculously change. If you want change, you have to be the change. And so one of the things that I really talk about heavily is the idea of inclusion and discussion and collaboration. We were able to do this at City Hall, and you can do this at the very top. If you want change, then you have to vote for change. It boils down to individual responsibility. And how can you marshal a vision with everybody to ensure that we address inequalities in this country? We provide education, we provide access to housing, we provide access to land in certain ways that are transparent and equitable. Otherwise, you will always have the system permeate. It actually really would boil down to having people look at a system of empowerment versus dependency. The politician wants the voter dependent. And they will put in
let me just say that, because I think I couldn't agree with you more. I think that definitely people need to recognize the power of their vote. But I also think that I cannot, just say that we absolve the politicians of the responsibility here. Let's look at this very realistically. We want an empowered electorate. We all do. But when my lifeline for my child's education or my lifeline for my groceries are attached to my allegiance or my support for a political party, then I have to take care of the basic needs beyond being an empowered voter when I go out to cast my ballot. And so that system is perpetuated by those who hold the authority, by those who make those decisions.
Yeah, and that system is wrong, and that system needs to be changed. So that one of the things that I talk about heavily in the video is restoring the dignity of individuals. That you have to go to a politician's office and wait for something is a shame.
Maybe what we should move away from is saying politicians to our elected officials, because our leaders are there for a purpose. But let me not lose the opportunity. We are in an election year. You have put yourself forward for the leadership convention of the United Democratic Party. Naturally, because we know how the country views politics, people will see this as a part of your campaign. How do you respond to that?
Everything that I do is part of my campaign. Everything that I do, even when I go to court, that's part of my campaign. So that one of the things that people will recognize is that you have to look at leadership in relation to what they have done. Part of the thing that I kind of mentioned in the video is things specifically that we did at City Hall to empower people and to ensure that wealth trickles down to our staff. We raised salaries every year for 6 years at City Council. Never before was that done. We did the land program, we did insurance. When I was putting together that video, counselors and other people were even texting me and said, no, but you did more for staff. And I think that you need to kind of recognize that politics is not a bad word. We actually, when we talk about politics, that when a politician campaigns, that's a bad thing. Nothing is wrong with that. You just have to campaign about ideas, and you have to be about integrity when you're doing it. So when I am putting this video out there, clearly I'm saying that we need change. Clearly I'm saying that I would want to inspire and bring the change. And I'm saying that I could bring together a focal point in relation to articulating a vision and bringing together collaboration and partnership, so that there's nothing wrong with me saying that it is part of a wider vision in the direction that I think the UDP needs to go and the direction that I think the country needs to go.
And looking at what we are currently faced with, our elections should have been slated somewhere around November, maybe before. It can be after. That means that currently our Prime Minister, who is expected to surrender the leadership of the ruling party, will be taking us through at least this phase of recovery. He's spoken of saying, he's going to borrow until he basically can't borrow anymore to be able to meet public wages. He said publicly that essentially whoever the next leader is going to be will have to face the IMF, because clearly we'll be that much in debt. What are your thoughts on how this should actually pan out? Should we be focusing on perhaps getting whoever the new leader will be to kind of plan and make decisions knowing that they will face the long-term consequences of those financial decisions?
Well, I wouldn't really focus on that. The reality is that I would indicate that whatever the position is, the person who leads this country has to be somebody who is creative, has to be somebody who does not ignore any idea, has to be somebody who is about charting a vision, has to be somebody who can bring people together, has to be somebody who has credibility, has to be somebody who is able to make tough choices, has to be somebody who can represent Belize internationally. And whatever the situation is, that person needs to be able to walk in there and make it work. One of the things that I would say here is that when I inherited City Hall, that City Hall was in a bad shape. It was in a very bad shape. That's the largest municipality in our country. And it was in a bad shape. It was low morale and it was debt-ridden. And we, in the course of 6 years, went in there and we turned that place around so that after 6 years, the majority of Belizeans would have said that Mayor Bradley did a good job. But 6 years before, they wouldn't have said that. So that a leader really is about the situation, the cards that life has dealt with you, and going in there and making that work. And what I'm saying is that whoever is the leader has to be prepared to do that. So if it is tomorrow, if it is next year, if it is in November, if it is wherever, the point is that I am already coalescing a vision and a group of people that I would be able to work with to say that this is what the country needs. Yeah. And the leadership to step in there whenever that time is, whoever that person is. So that if it comes about, and I would say this readily, if it comes about that person is a person from the People's United Party, I would support that person because I want to see Belizeans progress. So that one of the things that we need is that we need to be able to see whatever happens. We have a vision, we have a plan, we have leadership that can bring people together, and we have leadership that can step into the office and make whatever is their work for the benefit of everybody.
All right. And with that, we want to say thank you for joining us this morning and discussing your ideas. I think we have definitely welcomed many different schools of thoughts as to what we can and need to be looking at in terms of moving forward. So thank you for sharing your thoughts. All right. And with that, yes? All right, with that, we're going to close off this segment. Of course, we keep on talking about the financial struggle that people have been facing. And the next segment is actually going to be very good for people who are looking for work. BPOs are still open and they are hiring. We'll get an update from the Ready Call Center after the break, so stay tuned.
This COVID update was brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service. Our Fulltech family remains your
Channel 5 is keeping you informed of all the latest developments. For an insightful look at the week's events across the country, tune in to Uncovering COVID-19, a Channel 5 special every Friday at 8 p.m. Join host William Neal and his guest panelists as they provide in-depth analysis on the impact that COVID-19 is having on all of us from a health, economic, and legal point of view. Don't miss this informative and significant television program, Uncovering the COVID-19 Pandemic, every Friday night at 8, only on Channel 5.
Uh-oh, what are those?
Germs!
That's right, they're germs, and they love to spread.
Uh-oh!
And how do they spread?
Hands!
Germs can spread everywhere from hands, and from hands they move on to food, toys, other hands, and faces.
Yuck!
Germs make people sick, and that's why it's very important to wash hands.
Hooray!
It's important to wash your hands, so follow these steps to do it right.
1,
Turn on the water and wet your hands.
2,
Use soap to lather your hands and scrub.
3,
Rinse your hands completely.
4,
Now that your hands are clean, use a paper towel to touch the handle and turn off the water.
5.
Dry your hands with a paper towel.
Hooray!
Follow these steps every time and you'll keep germs away. So remember, the best way to fight germs is wash hands.
Get information from a respectable international or official local source. When in doubt of COVID-19 information, verify before sharing or repeating the information. Prepare for COVID-19 with an easy plan of action for yourself and your family to put into practice to avoid or reduce the spread of the illness. Be calm and continue to stay informed of the developments of COVID-19. Adjust your plans where necessary based on official advisories. Your local health authority can provide the best information on whether COVID-19 is spreading in your area. If you become seriously ill with cold or flu-like symptoms, please contact your doctor or nearest health center. For more information, contact the Ministry of Health at our toll-free number 0800 MOH Care or through our Facebook pages, the Ministry of Health Belize or the Office of the Director of Health Services. We are here to help you. A health and wellness message from your Ministry of Health.
When someone you love becomes a memory, the memory becomes a treasure. Channel 5 introduces the Daily Obituaries. The Daily Obituaries will broadcast all death and funeral announcements and memorials to honor your loved one's life and memories. The Daily Obituaries airs on Channel 5 prior to the evening newscast, with subsequent repeats at 10 p.m. and 12 noon the following day. It will also be placed online on our social media platforms, all for a standard package fee. Celebrate their lives and memories with Channel 5's Daily Obituaries. Honor in life and reverence in death.
Been drinking all night, feeling so high. Better not drive, won't even try.
Been drinking all night, feeling so high. Better not drive, ain't gon' try. Been drinking all night, feeling so high. Better not drive, ain't gon' try. If you're drinking and driving, I'm not going with ya. If you're drinking and driving, I'm not going with ya. People die every day, I'm not going with ya. I'ma find my own way, I'm not going with ya. It's okay, I'll wait. Even good people make mistakes. I don't wanna realize when it's too late. Drinking and driving is never safe. If you're drinking and driving, I'm not going with ya. If you're drinking and driving, I'm not going with ya. Been drinking all night, feeling so high. Better not drive, ain't gonna try. Been drinking all night, feeling so high. Better not drive, ain't gonna try.
And we are back. Jumping right into our second conversation now, we are going to be continuing along similar veins, talking about employment now. Joining us to discuss not only employment, but also their 15th anniversary, we have representatives from the Redical Center Belize. And so with us this morning are the Chief Executive Officer of Redical Center BPO, Nubia Ramirez, and we also have the Vice President of Operations, Dave Long. Good morning, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Gavin. Good morning, Marlene.
Yeah. So this is an interesting time for the Redical Center in that you are approaching your 15th anniversary.
Yeah, definitely. It's a very important accomplishment for us. Next week, on June the 2nd, we are going to complete our 15th anniversary. We opened the operation in 2005. So we are very pleased to have different news besides than just celebrating the anniversary, because it's a very special way to celebrate without the situation that is happening right now with the COVID virus.
Yeah, it's especially interesting because you know, over the years, the company. Perhaps you can talk to us a little bit about how the Redical Center has grown, you know, in terms of size and services. So, how has that sort of development been?
Well, when we came to Belize, of course, we were the first call center. And it's very curious, and even I just heard from you that a lot of people usually associate the name of our company like if any call center in Belize is already called. Yeah. And we know that of course we open the path for other companies to be able to start also having operations here in Belize. So we are very pleased that we set up the path at first. And other companies have been able, this industry is huge, so we are very pleased that other companies has been able also to be successful in trying to have the BPO industry develop here in the country.
And of course, that growth also means that you are continuing to expand. So that, of course, leads us into a little bit of what we're going to be talking about this morning, in that you are having an initiative where you're looking to hire, you know, a large amount of people. I think 500 persons. Am I right?
Yes, definitely. Our plan is to be able to offer 500 positions. We have been hiring very intensively after the lockdown during the month of May, and our plan for the following 3 months, and even for this year, is very ambitious. So at first, and with the request that we already have from clients, our existing clients, and some of the new ones that joined the company, is to provide 500 jobs. But definitely, we have bigger plans before even the end of the year. No.
So let me take it back a moment. You know, when the pandemic and the restrictions that came as a result of the pandemic came into place, a lot of businesses kind of just had to close down because they didn't have space or they weren't essential. How did you guys pass the time? I understand that you had made some very quick adjustments to be able to make sure your people could work from home.
Yeah, we did two options. We had our work from home, we employed our work from home staff, and also before the lockdown, because we seen it was coming, and we wanted to ensure that our staff was healthy, still be productive, and be able to hopefully still make money. So before the lockdown was in place, we did secure a hotel, and we provided our employees with 3 meals a day. We had strict guidelines on health, checking temperatures every 4 hours. We exceeded all the Ministry of Health requirements, went above and beyond that. But we was able to, because we do have some clients that not only infrastructure-wise, but just from a sheer management standpoint, that will not allow us to work from home. But we deployed as many people as possible to the work from home model, and the ones that couldn't, we got to hang out with them for a few weeks in a hotel. So
you put them up in a hotel to limit exposure so that they could still come to work.
Yeah, it was completely locked down. Once I was there, and it was before the state of emergency was in place. But once you was there, you was there. If you left, obviously you had to go back home. You couldn't re-enter. So, we took all the precautions, and
we basically spent the lockdown together in a hotel working, and then the other people were able to work from home. And exactly the same situation of working from home is what we did with our employees who are living in Orange Walk and Belmopan and the rest of the districts in Greece.
And if you look across the industry as well, a lot of the other countries that are BPO countries that are, that kind of kept afloat if they didn't have a work from home model was, all the other BPO countries did. The Philippines did it, India did it, several other countries did it as well. I don't know if we're the only ones in Belize that did it, but we was able to continue operations and continue to keep our clients happy, and now here we are. So
I mean, that's really positive news on both ends. One, that you kind of became as innovative as possible to figure out how to keep the work going or keep your employees working. But it's also encouraging to know that your clients, or that there still is a demand for the services that you offer. Let's talk about that for a second, because let's think back to 15 years ago. I think the original impression of what a call center was, or ReadyCall, is completely different now, and I think people see just a wider range of opportunities that exist. Who are the clients that are seeking the services now?
Well, you are correct. For several years, because we keep, of course, our biggest customer, I would say, throughout all of these years, we kept working in the cellular industry for 12 years. So basically, people were associating always the call center business to basically work with the cellular campaign. So, of course, we transitioned successfully to develop a portfolio. And there are we are serving all kinds of industries at this time. Telecommunications, health, education, insurance, home services, which includes internet, cable, electricity, retailers. So the type of services and campaigns that we are now serving changed completely. Now it's not just about taking calls, it's about also replying to emails, chatting, interacting by chat with customers, doing back office work. So it's not just about taking calls, it's no longer just a call center. That's why even we transitioned the name to RCC BPO, because at the end of the day, it's business process outsourcing. So it's any process that any company wants to outsource, we offer those kind of services. And of course, here from the list.
Yeah, and then on the BPO side, business process outsourcing side, when you think about the industry as a whole, it's really from anybody from the small, medium, large to Fortune 500 companies they're using the BPO, they're in the BPO industry in some way, somehow. They're using a call center either for customer service, sales, tech support, human resources, chat, anything you can think of, correct. That is the BPO industry. It's a very large industry. And we have an incredible opportunity in Belize right now, just not RCC, the other players in the industry as well, to really grow on this. COVID has been horrible for everyone across the world, but we have been blessed in Belize, even though it's been bad. It's been a bad experience. But coming out of COVID, there's a lot of those BPO countries still shut down. And now people are really, before even COVID happened, they was looking at the nearshore option. Because in the industry, you have three options. You have onshore, nearshore, and offshore. Your onshore options are usually companies that outsource their call center in America or Canada or whatever country they're from. Your offshore is usually Asia or countries like Philippines, India, and that's really where the industry started booming. And now we've got the nearshore options that's becoming really attractive to everybody, just because it's all of the, Mexico, it's all Americas, right? And you can jump in a plane and be in Belize in a handful of hours versus, 26-hour flight and 13-hour time zone difference. So that nearshore option is really becoming popular.
And it's a very interesting option right now for companies.
In Belize, I think we have all grown to understand over the years, is really a prime location for many reasons. One, its proximity to the US and Canadian markets, but also the fact that we speak English, we understand a lot of US culture, and we even have bilingual people who speak both Spanish and English who can be able to be your employees. In fact, you opened a center in Orange Walk recently, didn't you?
Yeah, well, we opened our Orange Walk branch in 2018, and it was due to the demand for bilingual services, which wasn't the usual even here in Belize, because we were trying always to offer the plus that the English here in Belize is definitely the level of English that an American company is looking for. But we found also that some clients wanted the same level either with the English or with the Spanish. So definitely areas like Cayo, Orange Walk, or Corozal are very good places for us to get the bilingual services at native level for both of the languages. So as you mentioned, definitely Belize has the perfect location, the familiarity with the culture, and now the demand as well for bilingual services is an additional opportunity and a plus that definitely Belize can take as an advantage, besides the amount of young people and the level of unemployment basically is creating the correct environment for us to be able to grow the industry together, no matter really what is even the BPO company that is running here. The number of companies looking for service is huge, and the amount of people here wanting or looking for a job is also huge. So I believe that we have a good combination right now.
When we look at what's happening in the economies worldwide, we see quite a bit of financial strain for companies. Some are cutting down staff, and it also can be seen as an opportunity for sectors like BPOs, because some of the services that used to be offered in-house can now be outsourced. What have you been finding? Is this actually going to become a possibility of a boom for BPOs?
Well, this is basically creating a lot of opportunities, and for the BPOs it's an opportunity to innovate. So either, let's say Belize, I believe never experienced, I have been here for 18 years, the work from home experience. So that was a challenge, I believe, for everybody, no matter what was the company. There are some activities, of course, and services that can be offered from home. We were not, I will say, ready for it. I would say that people, not just the company, but the infrastructure, where people are living. So the challenge is definitely a great experience for the country, because now we know that in a way we can offer also that kind of service in a major scale than what we were thinking years ago. But on the other side, it's already a test for us to know that additional services came up of the opportunity of the virus. Let's say maybe before companies that were not experiencing issues, now they're having a need for customer service because they are experiencing problems. So now they need people that can help to support their customers and provide answers to help them to process transactions, even transactions that maybe before didn't exist. So it's like a combination. It's at the same time chaos, but opportunities for all the companies to change the way that everybody was conducting business.
You know, it was there pre-COVID as well. Because like I mentioned before, the nearshore option was already becoming very popular in the corporate world. And now with COVID and the people starting to open back up and the downsizing the economy in general across the world, yeah, it's opened more doors, but it was already there. I think it's just the right time now to really capitalize on it and help the local economy and create jobs.
Well, we know, and you said very clearly, what the unemployment situation is in the country. So when you issue a release that says 500 plus jobs available, you know, I'm sure everyone will be looking forward to getting an opportunity. Let's talk about what type of employees you're looking for and what are the jobs that you're foreseeing you will need them for.
Okay, well, as I mentioned, we have different clients and campaigns. The skills are kind of different between each of the campaigns, but I would say that what we are looking for in general are people who can speak proper English, that are having great conversational skills, the personality to assist people, to help people. So definitely typing skills are required. And even though some of the campaigns are taking calls and other campaigns are email and chatting, definitely in all cases people are to type information into any kind of software, so the typing skills are very important for us. But I will say that the most important part is the willingness to learn, having really the willingness to practice the English, because that is something that sometimes people don't pay attention, that they're interacting a lot of the time in Creole, and then when they have to be interacting full-time in English, it's like a change or a challenge for them. So we are definitely looking for people who are able to develop and challenge themselves, because we provide training to help them to develop skills. So even if people just finish high school, if they finish or still they are going even for college, or if they finish even bachelor, I believe the positions that we are offering are not just for agent positions. We are offering agent positions, quality analysts, supervisors, people for the reporting team, for recruitment, for administrative, because once you grow the agent space, you develop the whole logistic and additional support positions that are coming around with that role. So at this point, I will say that people with all kinds of qualifications or with minimum qualifications in terms of the English typing and so are people that we are interested in giving the opportunity right now.
If you have the will, we can teach the skill, right? So another thing we're going to do as well is we're going to start next week traveling to other districts and educating people in the BPO industry, having, I guess you could call them recruiting seminars, educational seminars, that for people that may be in other districts, never worked in a call center or a contact center or BPO. And we're going to give them a presentation on the industry, educate them on what we do and what the industry does, and also offer some testing as well, and kind of open the door and try to draw some people in that, you know, they have never thought of working in a contact center. And also
especially people, let's say right now, we're working with the tourism industry. Maybe they were not at offices or so, they were not used to, but they have definitely great customer service. They have been interacting all the time with foreigners, with all the tourists. So definitely those are people that we would like also to have joining the company. And at the end of the day, it's going to be a very good learning experience for them. Even if later on they decide to go back maybe to one of these jobs, definitely it's going to be a very good learning experience. And the type of subjects and campaigns that we manage definitely are completely different. So it's going to be a very good learning experience for everybody.
So if you're traveling around the country doing these recruiting seminars, does that mean that your new hires from other parts of the country will be working from home?
We are trying at the beginning that people definitely are working from the office, because in this case, Marlene, definitely we recruit people, they go to training, and definitely the first 60 days are really the key on this process, which means that definitely you are able to adapt to the campaign, to all the information that is provided during training, and you need a lot of assistance maybe at first, especially I would say the first week is usually a big challenge for people. So definitely thinking that people will be able to work from home when they are just joining is really difficult. We do prefer to keep our people that are very experienced, and in that case, we can even send more people to work from home from the existing ones to be able to open more space for the new ones so that they can get all the assistance here in-house.
And also, are you looking at any sort of a timeline or sort of a deadline that you hope to fill these positions by?
Yesterday.
Wait till you're flooded with applications.
We have been recruiting and hiring a lot of people. I believe even just during May we entered about 200 people. So our numbers every week, even though right now we're talking about 500 people, our numbers are changing constantly, and not to get lower but higher. So right now we're talking about 500. It's like per week, like 100. That's why we're saying in the following 3 months, 500. But this number can change dramatically next week, in 2 weeks, because there is a huge need and for the services, and we already proved that we can handle the challenges and that we can definitely deliver what the clients are looking for.
So just in specifics for the jobs, 2 things. Are they short-term employment, and also are they only entry level?
No, so it's not short-term employment. We're hiring full-time, and as Nubia mentioned, we're hiring at all levels, right? So we're hiring agents with experience, with no experience. We're hiring leadership, recruitment, people for admin, because as Nubia mentioned a few moments ago, with growth like this, you have to grow a supporting team around that, right? And that's all departments. So we're going to be recruiting for all positions.
So these are permanent jobs?
And permanent jobs.
This is not just because the virus or so. So the point right there is that some people might have the impression that this is maybe a temporary situation. The clients that we have are clients that even before all of this, just to be able to have a client coming to Belize, it takes a lot of time. I always try to explain to people that the operation that any call center is running doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen when you start training. The whole process before starting training might take 6 months, might take a year. So right now we are starting operation for clients that we have been working the whole process about a year ago. So definitely these are permanent jobs that we were working in the whole process. It's just that now the process was a little delayed in some cases, because we were even planning to start in April some of these jobs. It's just that the plan changed completely. And in some cases delay, and in some other cases make us run with some of the requirements that the clients were having. So definitely these are full-time, permanent jobs, and it's definitely a great opportunity for people with different skills. The hourly rates are different depending on what is the campaign. that the person is able to handle.
And also, I like that too. A lot of the growth is also customers that we already had, because during the COVID, during the lockdown, we was not only able to stay open, but we exceeded our metrics and our KPIs and our goals for that campaign, for those campaigns. So we was able to build a level of trust with those customers when they really had no one else to turn to. But our employees, our staff, and our leadership have done an outstanding job of managing those clients, and we really built that trust with our existing client base. And so now they're also coming back to us and say, hey, we also have this, we want to grow A, B, C, right? So some of the new clients are also clients that was existing before.
So how do people apply?
Well, they can stop by our building, the Icon building here in 190 Newton Barracks. They can go through our Facebook page and they will be able to see the link. They can call us to our landline number, 223-5555.
Repeat that.
223-5555. They can go also to our Orange Walk branch. People can easily reach out to us, through our social media links. So the opportunity is right there, open for everybody.
I think you said one of the most important points is looking at how people who have been working in the tourism sector specifically will probably have an easy transition into offering your services because of the fact that they've been speaking English, talking to foreigners, and kind of doing just customer service on a daily basis. So that's going to be really helpful for those who've lost their jobs.
Yeah, we had the opportunity to interact with a lot of people in the tourism industry just by traveling here within the country. And we have found a lot of talented people everywhere. And so this is a great opportunity for them to know that even though if they never maybe try to work in a call center, in fact, I have found a lot of people that used to work even with call centers before, and then they switch to the tourism. But we have also a lot of people that maybe never tried. This is a good time for them to maybe give a chance and come and experience something different. As I mentioned, it's going to be a great learning experience for everybody.
Well, we thank you for joining us this morning and sharing with us the details of what you have been doing, how you were able to weather the pandemic. Of course, happy anniversary in advance, and we do hope that you have more than enough people reaching out to fill those spots.
Well, I hope that we can come back very soon with more good news. Meaning that we reach 500 and then we come back and say we need another 500.
All right. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. Have a good day. Bye.
There you have it. That was representatives of the Ruddy Call Center Belize celebrating the 15th anniversary. But I know of unique interest to many now offering, they have about 500 plus positions that need to be filled.
At all levels?
As of yesterday, they said. So that means, apply today if you're looking. And they do a lot of training. We didn't talk about that. So it's about having the skill sets like speaking English, good customer service, typing, and things like that. But in terms of what you'll do on the job, they usually offer extensive training on that as well. So please don't lose the opportunity. Call them, go by one of their offices, one in Belize City or Orange Walk. And you can even find them online and apply there as well. But we're going to go ahead and take a break now. And when we come back, we'll be checking in on our recently repatriated Belizeans on how they're doing on their quarantine. That's coming up after the break.
We all look forward to enjoying those
events across the country, tune in to Uncovering COVID-19, a Channel 5 special every Friday at 8 p.m. Join host William Neal and his guest panelists as they provide in-depth analysis on the impact that COVID-19 is having on all of us from a health, economic, and legal point of view. Don't
And we're back, and we are moving into our final conversation for today. Shifting gears entirely, we've been talking about the economy, about job opportunities, and now we just get to talk to two, I would imagine, very happy Belizeans who are now on Belizean soil. Of course, they were employed or are employed by cruise lines and had been sailing at sea for at least 2 months, and now they're back on soil, starting off their mandatory quarantine. We have with us Linda Blease and Ryan Bennett, isolated and separated at the Radisson in Belize City. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Well, it's great to see you guys. Can I just start off and say you're very happy to be home, I'd imagine.
Yeah, welcome back.
Of course, yes, we're very, very happy to be home. I'm very happy to set foot on land and, of course, familiar land, which is Belize. So.
Yeah. All right, so let's... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, pretty much the same for me, just coming back home, to familiar grounds and friends and family. So it's good to be back.
So Ryan, let's get a bit of your experience since we caught up with Linda last week. Where were you in the time of the pandemic, and what was the process like for you?
Well, actually, both myself and Linda, we were both on the same ship.
Mm-hmm.
So that was actually good. We had it was about three Belizeans on one of Celebrity Cruises' latest release, and so we had each other. We were able to kind of exchange information, keep contact, and I think that with the entire process, since the whole thing began, it was kind of like a holiday, a small holiday, meaning that we didn't have any guests on board. It's just about 1,000 crew or plus. We pretty much tried to entertain ourselves and to keep happy, to keep pep. But I think closer to the end, I believe, of that almost 2 months of just being out there, we were getting a little bit worried, simply because, if you don't have work, if you don't have guests, then, what's the point of being out there, So
yeah.
It was actually good to actually hear news of us getting back home and learning of Royal Caribbean's repatriation or their grand repatriation plan. So I was doing well throughout the whole entire thing. I actually had company. I know a lot of other crew members did not have that luxury of having somebody next to them, and we just weathered it through. We just kept each other's spirits up, and I have to say, wow, what an experience! Something definitely to remember.
Well, the pandemic is going to bring us strange experiences all around, but yours is definitely going to be one of the most unique. Being
for sure, yes.
Sailing at sea without knowing when you'd be able to go home. Take me back. I can't imagine being outside of Belize in these strange surroundings and hearing or being notified that I
believe we lost audio there, I think.
Yeah,
okay.
I think we lost audio.
All right.
I think we're back.
We're back?
Okay,
You can hear me? Great. So I was just going to say, that feeling of knowing that you couldn't come home had to be a tough one. Take me back to that moment.
I can't really hear anything. I'm not gonna lie to you.
I can't hear anything either.
Can you hear?
Oh.
You want to take it over, Lucy?
All right. So can you hear me, Ryan? I think we're having a little bit of an audio issue. We're trying to get that resolved.
Let me check the connection here.
All right.
Okay, so let's
we're back.
All right, you got us now?
Great. So what I was saying is, I can't imagine what it felt like to be out at sea or anywhere as a Belizean and not being able to come home. That had to probably be the hardest time for you, not knowing when you'd be able to get back to land?
Yes, like I mentioned before, coming on to the end, like almost like I would say halfway through our entire trip, I believe we were out there for about 70 to 75 days. I think at that particular point, we started to, grow some concern, simply because we were so unsure. We were so, unsure of what's the next step. We were getting updates from the CDC and the company. They were delivering the information to us daily through the PA systems. And, we had the information as it became available. But I mean, come on, imagine having 70 different nationalities on one ship, and that's 70 different governments that the company has to organize repatriation plans with, and Belize was just one of them. Luckily for us, I mean, we heard in the news that, the Prime Minister did mention that he was considering taking all the Belizeans back in home, of course, under conditions. And we're pretty happy that the conditions were met by Royal Caribbean. So, it turned out well.
And, and of course, the conditions were not only on the ship itself, but of course, when you did return, of course, there were some conditions imposed, obviously. The quarantine, so perhaps you can talk to us a little bit about what it's been like since you've actually landed back home now in sort of isolation.
I think I'm gonna pass this one to Linda because I think she has a little bit more of a colorful story to give on this.
More of a colorful story. Well, they had a lot of precautionary measures in place to keep the people that were coming to pick us up from the ship. So first of all, they made sure that us that were coming off the ship, our side from the ship side, made sure we had stuff like gloves, hand sanitizers, like face mask and all that stuff. Making sure the government of Belize actually asked, or immigration or whoever did, they asked for us to fog our luggage so as to disinfect it from any type of infection or anything, any disease or anything, germs or anything that may be attached to the luggage. Then we started to board the luggage. They did the entire process. I'm not sure when it comes to like the technical side, like I heard that I think the captain came off and like signed something or something to that sort. I'm not sure, so.
Okay.
But I know that when it came to us getting on the tender, everybody been well equipped, like the Belizean authorities have been well equipped. Had on their gloves and their facial gear and all that stuff, and made sure they social distance away from us. But besides all of that, they were very, 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 very welcoming, and they warm your heart on a little bit for like just come home and not feel like it was a burden for them to get us from off the ship.
Yeah.
And I agree, Linda. I think that they executed a very, very well thought of plan in terms of getting us from ship side to shore side and then into the hotel, because we pretty much had all the officials that were supposed to be there that were relevant. Everybody from the customs and immigration to the health officials, to the hotel officials, and they were all pretty much very nice. You could tell that they were well groomed to the service industry, and they knew how to handle the situation. And even though it, of course, was a very new situation for them. So we just want to thank them as well if we didn't get a chance to do so before.
I also really admire the fact that they had the area blocked off from society from coming around too close to the area, because at the end of the day, regardless of us knowing our situation and all that stuff like that, at least they're doing precautionary measures to make sure society is safe and stays out of the quarantine area while people under investigation are on their way to their quarantine facility.
Yeah. Now, that's kind of the protocol that was in place. But tell me how it felt. I mean, when you see that pilot boat pulling up towards that ship, a Belizean pilot's getting on board, that tender ship pulls up, you're finally going to be able to go home. What's the feeling like?
First of all, sorry, Ryan, I'm joining in right now. First of all, the day before, we had up in our cafeteria area, our buffet area, we had a cake that had Belize flag on it. And I don't know. I try not to be the most emotional person, but somehow it just hit home that you were close to home. Like it is real. Like it's been so many months, so many days, change of ships, all these extra new protocols that they're putting in place, all these restrictions and being countries are changing laws and all this stuff. And it's you try to keep your vibes up, but still the information that's coming in and all the effects that the pandemic has had worldwide, of course it has to affect you. I mean, we're human.
Yeah.
But I never really realized how much like the want to be home and how happy I was to be so close to home when I saw that cake and realized that we were close. And then the next day I woke up early in the morning and I could see the pilot thing. By the way, how na boss is in a boat? I see the pilot thing come past in the pilot boat, and I was like, oh man, look on my people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, Linda, just to add to that, I think that it was a little bit nerve-wracking because remember that the trip actually started off at Coco Cay in the Bahamas, and then we pretty much had the plan to sail all the way down to Colombia. Their plans got canceled. Then Panama's plans got canceled. And then eventually the captain said, well, you know what? We're just going to go up to Costa Rica. We're going to drop them off first, and then we're going to go up to Belize. So, you know, every day was a day closer to home. So you could imagine when your turn actually came to win the lottery, so as to speak, and you're like, all right, finally. So seeing the tenders there and seeing the officials board, and then you know, it was like about an hour and a half or 2 hours, right, Linda? That it took before they decided that, guys, you guys are cleared. Let's go on the boat and let's get you guys briefed on the situation. So
nice.
I feel that just collectively one overwhelming feeling of relief and joy, and of course with a home. So no better place than home, right? But I believe so.
Of course, and you're at the Radisson too. So you kind of just walked off the pier. You continue seeing the sea. We're there. You're having a slow adjustment away from that sea view. But let me go back to something. You guys know that there were some people in society that were fearful of the repatriation efforts because they feel that people who come into the country may possibly bring COVID-19. So it's a really great opportunity to talk about what was the situation on the ship. You know, you guys were actually being monitored the entire time.
I think I'm going to take this one first. There's a difference in culture in regards to OPP, outbreak prevention plans, and just generally how the ship versus here on land are executing those plans. So for us, it was a very closely, tightly knitted situation. It was monitored very closely simply because, one, we had temperature checks twice. Whether you were walking around the ship or whether you were in the 14-day on-ship quarantine. So some of the folks probably don't know, we actually had a 14-day quarantine, just like the one we're doing here on the ship in the guest staterooms, where the situation was very, very similar. So we had temperature checks. We also had proper OPP equipment, such as gloves. Mask wearing on board in the space was definitely a must. You know, it was something that was mandatory. And this happened every single day. This was every single day. Ship law versus land law is a little bit, ship law is a little bit more, I would say, a little bit more strict with the rules and the guidelines. And, you know, coming here, I think Linda and I both saw that things just relaxed a little bit from out of the window, you know, looking at society itself and how they operated. There were some people wearing masks. There were some people not wearing masks. And of course, others were just like, you know, just had a total disregard for the emergency plan, the national emergency plan. And we were looking at this from the windows at a daily basis. So it's a little bit different for us.
Yeah. And so being quarantined at home, it's easier?
No, go ahead.
I personally feel that people need to understand one thing. Once you're placed into quarantine, stay in the the closed space that you are.
In
The
your
reason
room.
why you are being quarantined is not for you to be in your room, then go walk about outside, then go to the shop down the corner, then invite your friends and over. You are trying to make sure in any case, if you come up with any symptoms of the pandemic, COVID-19 or whatever, at least it is contained in your environment, your enclosed environment. So when people ask me, can you go outside or can you go across the street, or no, even if no, that's not a question. We are supposed to stay majority of the percentage of the time inside our space, which is the room that we're provided.
Yeah.
Of course, we get feed outside and all that type of stuff, and we just go outside our door, pick up with food, and come right back in our I mean, I said cabin in a way.
Room.
Yeah, I know, right?
I
Still
make a
adjusting.
mistake all the time too.
And as well, no turn down service. You do your own turn down service. It's the same as being
Which
on
means
board.
change your own sheets, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine, but they drop it off for you.
Yeah.
Just same thing like on ships, and of course you clean your own room, which is the same like on ships.
Yeah.
Like on ships, we used to do every 2 days. We used to do towel change. So they would come. The person that comes has on gloves and all that PPE equipment, hands you the towels, and you take out your towels. They knock on your door. They say change the towels. You take it out. And then every 5 days, it's change of sheets. So you come knock on the door. They come knock on the door. You take off all your sheets. You spread your bed. You put out your garbage out of the door, and they pick it up, basically.
So you guys aren't allowed to leave the room at all?
No.
None at all.
Okay.
Yeah, that was gonna be my question, because both of you guys look pretty nice, like you're gonna be going out somewhere. You got
How you mean? We up on tour on TV?
Yep.
Right. Goes with the territory, right?
And you get your Belizean food now?
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
What we get rice and beans from the first day we got here. That was actually one of the, well, apart from Ali, Belizean style fried chicken, rice and beans was on the list, was on the top of the list for me. And they actually gave us that on the first day, and I'm like, yes, this is home. The true taste of being back in Belize.
That's a real welcome home.
And do you guys have any, something like on your wish list or something you can't wait to do once you do actually get out of quarantine?
I think what's going to happen for me is I'm going to spend most of the time with family and friends, and then eventually I'm going to see how I could make myself a little bit more busier, whether that means doing some work from online or, or doing a little bit of traveling. Because for us being at home, usually how the norm is that it's the 2 months vacation and about 6 to 7 months on the ship. So for our 2 months being at home, we would usually use that as a vacation. So I think I'm going to do a little bit more traveling, go up to the west, go down south, just basically try to make myself busy. So
yeah. And for you, Linda?
Me personally, I just can't wait for get out of here, go see my family, go home, my apartment, do my hair, because right now I have just, I want to spend as much time. I don't kind of want homebody, so one side at home in my own comfort, I'm pretty much good.
Yeah. And has there been any indication as to the future of your jobs?
Well, so far we're not really sure, to be honest. I think that we're actually in the same situation as most people in the world. Yeah. We do know that the company had laid off quite a few hundred employees from the shore side employment, but there hasn't been any actual decisions made to cut staff itself. But still, I mean, before we left Celebrity Cruises, of course, which is the luxury brand of Royal, they had ensured us that almost they would say that every employee leaving the ship would have a letter of employment for return. So they had ensured that to us. I mean, as to where we stand with that, we're just getting the news just like everybody else. So
yeah. Okay. All right. Anything you want to say? Your family is watching. They haven't seen you for months. They still can't see you yet. Your friends and of course to the rest of the Belize.
Yeah. So for the remainder of the time that we're under the national emergency situation, I would just say, guys, just follow the rules. They're set in place, for our safety. I know that sometimes it's hard because, you get carried away. You might forget your mask, or you might forget that it's curfew time. I would just say, just keep in mind that the rules are here just to protect us for this moment. And then, of course, hopefully, the government itself will come up with a solution to get the economy back running and to open up at least the airport so that we could have at least tourism and some additional industries going as well. So things will take time. I think that everybody just needs to have a little bit of patience and to keep following the rules. Gloves, mask at all time until this thing settles down, which should be in a few more months.
All right. And parting shot for you, Linda?
Well, he basically said the part when it comes to all the formal parts, but I just want to say hello to my peoples there out the Kikaka. Shout out my Kikaka people. I know they like watch morning show. You know that I don't front with them, Marlene. As well, my beautiful Belizeans. I'm gonna keep safe out there, and please trust me. The precautionary measures are there to create a pattern for you. So not try to fight it, just continue. When we come out of quarantine, because we're going to come out of quarantine in like a week and a half or something, right, Ryan? And yes. When we come out of quarantine, we will for sure follow all the measures then that are in place for try and as well keep safe. So take care of yourself. Remember, they're not teach you your body that your temple for nothing.
Okay. And that this is day 5, so what you have 10 more days to go?
Yeah.
All right. Well, best of luck. Stay safe, stay sane, and welcome home.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
All right. And there you have it. They're in great spirits. I could only, I can't imagine what it would be like to finally be able to be home, taste some good rice and beans.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's great to hear from them. And I love that I hear how serious or how much they understand the measures that are in place and following through with them.
No,
so.
Absolutely. That's really heartening to hear.
Yeah.
It's great to have them back and great to see that they're spreading and that they're trying to, keep the word alive, keep the awareness alive about all we need to do to successfully manage the COVID-19 pandemic.
That's right. All right, and now we shift gears. Parents, this is your time. Get the kids in front of the television. It's time for
Kids Time. And today we're learning all about tsunamis with Dr. Binox.